Hey awesome people, welcome to another episode of Sew Addicts. Today's episode, we are making a sweater cape with a belt option. So I've always been a big fan of capes, especially the ones that have a lot of designs or patterns, just something with a little bit more oomph than just a regular plain cape. So this is an easy step-by-step tutorial showing you how to put together a sweater cape with a belt option. So that's kind of cool. So I do also realize that just because I changed climate does not mean that most of my actual subscribers are probably going through some kind of climate change right now. So this video is dedicated to you guys that are going into fall and going into the winter later on. This sweater cape is going to save your life because it's super warm. So if you're new to my channel, thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Sew Addicts. I really hope you guys enjoy what you see so far. If you haven't hit the subscribe button already, please make sure to do so at the bottom of this giant screen, and let's just jump right into it. So to get started with our sweater cape, we are going to need about 2¼ yards of medium weight fleece fabric. So now we're going to go right ahead and actually start drafting our cape. So you want to make sure to put your fabric on fold. I have mine selvage to selvage. Now I'm just going right ahead and actually drawing a nice straight line across the edge. I'm only doing this to make sure that my fabrics are actually laying equally in half at the edge. So you just want to make sure to draw a nice straight line at the edge. Now we're going to go right ahead and actually measure 4 inches from that line all the way down. So I'm measuring 4 inches down and I'm just marking that out. And then we're also going to go right ahead and actually measure 2 inches. Now this 2-inch point, we're actually going to go ahead and actually straighten this out. So I'm taking my ruler and I'm marking that 2-inch point all the way down. So this 2-inch point is where our neckline is going to start. So I'm placing my tape measure on that point over there and I'm measuring 4 inches all across to form a nice curve. Now this is our neckline. So I just created a neckline using 4 inches from this point all around. So the next thing we're going to do is to mark out our shoulder. So for our shoulder, I'm going to be measuring 4 inches again from that neckline point, as you guys can see, and I'm also going to be coming in down about 1 inch. So this is going to give us a nice shoulder point. Then we're going to go right ahead and actually create a nice looking curve for our shoulder point. So now that we have this curve at our shoulder, we're going to go right ahead and actually create how wide we want our sweater cape to be. So I'm going right ahead and actually measuring 10 inches down. Now this is just more of an eyeballing thing to me. If you wanted your cape to be a lot wider, you would have to go a lot less than 10 inches. And if you wanted your cape to be a lot slimmer and not too flare, you would have to go more than 10 inches. So I'm going about 10 inches and I'm just really eyeballing this, but you want to make sure to attach your shoulder point all the way to that 10-inch line. So you can kind of come down past the 10-inch line a little bit depending on what you do. It's not really a science for it. You just want to make sure to create a nice straight line from your shoulder curve all the way to the edge of your fabric. So now that we have this, we're going to go right ahead and actually measure how long we want our cape to be. So I'm measuring all the way from my neckline at the top. I'm measuring about 32 inches to the bottom, depending on how long you want your cape to be. It could be shorter, it could be longer. So you want to make sure to draw a straight line going across. So this is your hemline. Now that we have our sleeve point all drawn up, now we're going to attach that point of our sleeve all the way down to the bottom. Now also, this is very freehand. You just want to make sure to give a nice curve from this point all the way down to our hemline. Again, you don't want it to be too curvy. You can just create a nice slight curve all the way down to the hemline, just like this. So after drawing all your marks on the fabric, yours should be looking something like this. So the next step we're actually going to do, which is absolutely optional, is to create our belt holes. So you don't have to do this, but if you do, all you want to do is measure about 14 inches from your neckline all the way down and measure 7 inches out. Now this is our point where we're going to put in a belt hole. So again, like I said, you don't have to do this if you do not want a belt going across your sweater cape, but if you do, all you got to do is measure 14 inches down from your neckline and 7 inches out. Now when you have this point, you can just mark that. Again, I also pinned it down to recreate it on the other side. So now I'm just going ahead and actually adding a 1/2 inch seam allowance all across my sweater cape, and you want to make sure to add 1 inch seam allowance at the hemline just like this, and you pretty much just want to cut it out of your fabric. So now we're going to go right ahead and actually repeat the same process for our back. But then to make the back easier, we're actually going to trace out the front pattern for the back as well. The only difference for our back is we're actually going to be folding over that 2-inch point we created earlier for the front. We're going to be folding this over, and we're actually going to place this on the fold for our back pattern. So we're folding this over, and the only thing we're going to do for our back is to actually decrease the neckline. So we went 4 inches for our front, but we're actually going to be going up 2.5 inches here and just attaching that and closing it off at the shoulder right there. You pretty much want to keep everything else the same. Again, you want to go up in the neckline, fold over the 2-inch point, and actually just trace everything else. Again, you also want to trace the belt holes for your front end to make sure that you repeat them on the back side as well. Now once you have this all traced out, all you want to go ahead to do is to actually cut this from the fabric as well. So now we have our front and our back. So now we're going to go right ahead and actually focus more on the front. So you want to make sure to actually split your front open. So I'm going ahead and actually split my front open, as you guys can see. And now we have our 2 pieces for our front with a front opening. And again, you want to make sure to also trace your belt holes and making sure that they're equal on both sides. So now that we have all these marks, we're going to go right ahead and actually sew down our center front. So for the center front, I'm going ahead and actually folding over the 2-inch point that we have, and you just want to make sure to fold this over, and we're going to top stitch this on the sewing machine. So I went ahead and actually sewed this down on the sewing machine. As you guys can see, you just want a nice straight line going across the center front. So now we're going to go ahead and actually prep the opening for our belt holes. So my belt hole, I've marked the points, as you guys can see. Now you want to make sure that the belt hole is about 2 inches wide or long. So you want to make sure to actually slash into this 2-inch point. Now when you do get to the edge of your mark, you want to make sure to also create a nice triangle. As you guys can see, you want to make sure to create a nice triangle that's flapping on both sides of our opening. Now to finish up this opening, we're also going to be taking a piece of fabric that's about 1.25 inches in size. So you want to make sure to take a piece of fabric that's a square that's 1.25 inches. So I do have my piece of fabric right here. So we're going to go ahead and actually sew this on the sewing machine. So when sewing this down, you want to make sure to attach one side of the piece of fabric to the opening, and we're going to sew this down at about 1/4 inch. So I'm going ahead and actually sewing this down at about 1/4 inch from edge to edge. Now when you have this sewn down, the next thing we're going to do is to fold this over and take that extra piece of fabric inside the wrong side of our fabric. Now this automatically just covers all that ugliness of the opening that we created. So I'm going over and actually covering the opening that we created, and you just want to make sure to top stitch this from the front. So if you top stitch this, you also want to make sure to catch the fabric at the back when you do. So I'm going ahead and actually top stitching this on the sewing machine, as you guys can see. So when you do have this all top stitch, it should create a nice looking clean edge for both of your opening. So I went ahead and actually finished up the other side as well. Now the next thing you want to do is to basically just top stitch both of these edges together. So this just kind of reinforces the opening a little more. So I'm going ahead and actually top stitching both sides of the opening. So you want to make sure to repeat this process for basically all your belt openings for your front and your back. So when you're done, it should look something like this, nice and clean, and at the back also like this. So make sure to also press as you're going along. So I made sure to do this for my front and also created openings for my back as well. Remember, we traced out openings for our back belt holes before. So you want to make sure to create all this for your back and your front as well. Now the next thing we're going to do is to go ahead and actually start the process of attaching our front and back together. So I'm going ahead and actually placing my front and back together right sides to right sides, just like you would sew anything. And I'm just going ahead and actually finishing up the edges of my front and back. So you want to make sure to sew down the necklines of your front and back, folding about a 1/2 inch for the neckline of your front and back. So after sewing this on the sewing machine, yours should look something like this. Now we're going to go right ahead and actually attach our front and backs together. So for front and back, you want to make sure to attach your neckline all the way to this point. So I'm just going ahead and actually pinning where we're going to sew on the sewing machine. Now when it comes to the bottom of the cape, we're going to go right ahead and actually measure 9 inches up from the bottom and only sew from that marked point all the way to the bottom, leaving this opening right here. So after sewing this on the sewing machine, yours should look something like this. So I went ahead and actually sewed this, and I have my shoulders all connected and also the bottom of my cape, leaving opening for me to actually pass my arms through. So now we're going to go right ahead and actually finish up this opening here. We're folding over a 1/2 inch just like we did for the neckline, and you just want to make sure to top stitch this again like we did for the neckline. This would finish your armhole nice and clean. So then we're going to go right ahead and actually finish up the hem as well. So remember, we do have an inch seam allowance for the hem, so you want to make sure to fold up the inch seam allowance, and we're just going to top stitch this just like we did for the armhole and the neckline. So after top stitching this, yours should look something like this. Your armhole is all nice and clean, and of course your hem is nice and clean as well. Again, do not forget to keep pressing. So now we're going to prep our belt to actually finish up our sweater cape. So in prepping the belt, you want to make sure to cut a wide strip of about 4 inches wide and as long as you want. You want to fold over the strips a 1/2 inch on both sides, and we're just going to top stitch this on the sewing machine. So after top stitching it, it should look something like this. So at this point, you are pretty much done with your sweater. All you got to do now is just pass the belt through the belt loops or the belt hose. So at this point, you have your sweater cape all finished up, and it's pretty much ready to wear. Tutorial. I do appreciate you guys being here on another episode of Sew Addicts. I know it was really easy to put together, right? I wasn't lying. So yeah, so I really hope you guys actually make this, and when you do, make sure to try out different patterns and colors and prints and things. You know, you want to stand out from the crowd with this. I'm telling you, you're going to look amazing. So I do appreciate you guys being on my channel today. If you do like this video, please give this video a big thumbs up. If you have any questions or suggestions or just want to say hi, please make sure to scroll down and leave me a couple of words. I'm definitely reading those as well. Now, if you do make the sweater capes, I want to see what you guys are doing. Tag me on Instagram at damiadenikex or any of my social media platforms. I will be looking out for your designs, by the way. So one last thing, if you haven't already, please make sure to hit down that red subscribe button to see more awesome videos from me, and I hope to catch you awesome Sew Addicts next week.